Please, friend, enter the guests who are in the waiting room. Welcome, Dr. Pascarilla.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. So appreciate you. We'll start soon. We are waiting for our president and our dean. Dr. Gowli is also here. Dr. Gowli, it is okay? Live streaming? Jessley Anderson. Friends, we are waiting for our some other friends and guests, then we will start soon. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Pascarilla, the president of Association of American Colleges and Universities, she is here with us. Our President Wilson is with us. Thank you, President Wilson, for coming.
Thank you very much for having me, and let me express my appreciation to Dr. Lynn Pascarilla as well for accepting your invitation to be the keynote speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Oh my God. So we are just waiting for our Dean Garrison. I think he will be with us soon. I can see Dean Prime joined us just right now. Thank you, Dean Prime, for joining us. I appreciate you. You can unmute yourself, Dean Prime. Thank you, Dr. May.
Sure. Good to see everyone. And Dr. Pascarilla, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Dr. May is here. We're just waiting for Dean Garrison.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How's everyone doing today?
I'm just getting older and uglier every day, but I'm planning to keep on doing that.
just for Dr. Garrison, then we'll start. Oh, Dean Garrison is here. So thank you everyone for coming. President Wilson, can we start? Or we should?
Yes. For everyone who has joined us for the annual Grind conference, I want to officially welcome you, first of all, and thank you for carving time out to take in this annual conference with what I know would be absolutely terrific presentations. I want to express our great appreciation to Dr. Lynn Pascarilla for accepting the invitation to come and address Morgan and the graduate students in particular. I hope you know how fortunate you are to be able to attract a person of Lynn's caliber, internationally renowned scholar, former college president who is now leading AAC&U, which is, of course, the national organization looking at issues of liberal learning and the role of bold and imaginative thinking and how we as institutions and you as students should be looking at these issues as well. We are so excited here at Morgan as we come to the end of our first 10-year strategic plan, having achieved so many of the goals that we set out to achieve in 2011. One of those goals in that plan was that we would really be on a mission to elevate the research classification of Morgan. And we set in that plan the goal to move Morgan from doctoral research university, moderate research activity, to doctoral research university, very high research activity. High research activity. And we achieved that in 2018. And thanks to Dr. Willie May, thanks to Dr. Garrison, thanks to Dean Prime and Dr. Young and all of our faculty who have been publishing, winning grants, advising doctoral students, Dr. Ghali, I see, Dr. Walsh, there's so many individuals who should be taking ownership of that achievement. Now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And many of you may have read that I have been opining on this in all kinds of editorials and in national settings. By 2030, we want Morgan to be in the top category of research institutions, very high research activity. There's about 130 research institutions that are now in that flagship top category. And the way we see ourselves getting there is to own two things. One is to own interdisciplinary research. And that is really what we are designed to do. Now, I know I'm on the program a little bit later to make these remarks, and so I'm just making them up front because I want to give Dr. Pascarilla as much time as possible. But we are looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we're looking at where we want this institution to be 10 years from now, by 2030. And now we But As we look to move to this next floor of the research house, it is with that in mind. Number one, we want to make sure that we are owning transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary research. And we want to own that in a way that will help us to further define what it means to be Maryland's preeminent public urban research institution. So this is not in any way to try and duplicate what our great, great friend Johns Hopkins is doing or what the University of Maryland College Park is doing. It is to focus on the urban condition, issues of inequity, issues of racial justice, issues that are germane to urban sustainability. And we think in doing that, Morgan would be well served by being in that category of institutions and not confused about the research that we are producing that will help the city and the state and urban areas across the country know what to do on Monday morning. And so I want to say to all of you that I really do appreciate that you have as your theme a time of reflection, acceptance and change, interdisciplinary research during a COVID-19 pandemic and social injustice. Early on in this pandemic, I wanted to understand how our students, were experiencing the pandemic instruction-wise. And so I audited 2 online courses, and I learned a lot about some of the things that you will be addressing later on this afternoon. And so pleased to see that you are doing that. Now, finally, Provost Young and I, we just got off a conversation to finalize our agenda for the upcoming board meeting. And we're going to bring to the board at the upcoming board meeting a proposal to start nearly 20 new academic degree programs here at Morgan. And Lynn, I have not heard your presentation, but I think you'll be pleased that all of these are transdisciplinary. Many of them are rooted in the kinds of learnings that come out of the humanities and the social sciences and liberal arts and crossing the sciences and engineering in a way that's very exciting. I think 8 of these programs are PhD programs, 12 of them are, 8 of them are baccalaureate programs, and then 4 of them are master's programs. We are very, very excited about this moment, and we think the board would be as well. So your focus on interdisciplinary research is not being done in a vacuous way. It's being done as Morgan is positioning itself to be a leader in the interdisciplinary space. So with that, I will welcome all of you once again, and thank you for this opportunity to make a few remarks before we move on, Mr. Uden, with the rest of the agenda in front of us.
Thank you, President Wilson, for your speech. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohammad Sharifuddin. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Urban Educational Leadership Program here at Morgan, and also the president of Morgan State Graduate Student Association. The Morgan State Graduate Student Association organizes graduate research, interdisciplinary network, and development conference every year. The theme of this year's conference is a time of reflection, acceptance, and change, interdisciplinary research in the time of COVID-19 and social injustice. I'm not going into any details about it because we will hear from our guest. We already heard something from our president. I welcome Dr. Lynn Pascarilla, our keynote speaker. I am grateful to you, Dr. Pascarilla, for accepting my invitation. I got to listen to you last December at the STAR International Conference, and your speech motivated me. You talked about equity, quality, and inclusion in higher education. And as a graduate student of educational major and an SBCU student, I understood how important the discussion was. I also heard so much appreciation of you from Dr. Gowley. Respected audience, you already heard that she is the president of Association of American Colleges and Universities. Welcome to our conference, Dr. Pascarilla. I am humbled.
Thank you
I
so
also
much.
welcome our president, Dr. Wilson. What a motivational and visionary leadership role he is playing every day. He is a change maker. We all know he knows very well how to turn a group of people into a team to achieve Morgan's mission. Who we watched his yesterday's town hall, his speech motivated many of us like me. How transparent he is in his administration. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. You are my role model. When you speak in any meeting, I listen to you very attentively. I follow your path in the GSA to motivate my colleagues and peers. President Wilson, your leadership raised Morgan as a Carnegie R2 status, and I believe we will reach the milestone of R1 soon. President Wilson, you know, the GSA continuously organizing and promoting scholarly activities under the guidance of Dean Garrison, and will continue our efforts. Please accept my humble thanks, Dr. Wilson, for giving us some of your times. Your presence has honored us. Our Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Lisa Crampton Young, will join us later. Welcome, Madam Provost, to our conference. My fellow graduate students, you might know that Provost Young has formed a committee to identify the barriers of our dissertations or thesis completion. Provost Young is very sympathetic to the graduate students. She wants us to complete our dissertation or thesis smoothly. Welcome, Madam Provost. I also welcome Dean Garrison, Dean of the School of Graduate Studies. We all know how supportive he is to us. I would like to take a moment to thank Dean Garrison for hiring a staff member in the graduate school as the Director of Graduate Professional Development. This graduate school staff will work for us, will guide us to complete our graduation on time. Thanks, Dean Garrison, for thinking about us as always. You are a great support for us in organizing all of our scholarly events. I also welcome Dr. May, our Vice President of Research and Economic Development, Dr. Uttam Gowli, our University Council Chair. I also like Dr. Gowli's leadership style. Besides, he is my mentor, Dr. May and Dr. Gowli. Your presence motivated us. I can see here Dr. Prime, Dean Prime, our Dean of School of Education and Urban Studies. Thank you, Madam Prime, for joining us. You are such an inspirational leader in our School of Education. And thank you for guiding me and guiding us for our last event for Dr. Gloria Lerson Billings. Without your directions and your guidance, it would not be successful. And it was a tremendous event. I am so grateful to you. And thank you, Madam Prime. The list of supporting individuals is long, but I'll be remiss if I don't recognize some of them. First of all, I like to acknowledge my colleagues in the executive board, Grabaya Spiller, the Vice President, Fatima Smith, Second Vice President, Muhib Kobir, Secretary, Karen Ibring, Parliamentarian, Colin Oswaga, International Student Representative. I also welcome all presenters. I can see here Dr. Welsh is here, Dr. James is here, and some other distinguished faculty members is here. I appreciate you all. Dr. Welsh, he's my dissertation chair, and he's very supportive to me. Thank you, Dr. Welsh, to come here. Last but not least, the Administrative and Logistics Subcommittee of GRIND, Shantisha Pilgrim, Uzma Bint Haidari, Rolanda Payne, Everett Jackson, Dominic Turner, Teresa McBride, Emmanuel Masi. I think he joined us from Nigeria right now. And for your, I appreciate you for your contribution in organizing this conference. I welcome you all in the GRIND 2021. So before going to another program, so Dean Prime is here. I would like to take some privilege. Dean Prime, please, if you say something. Just some biasness because she is my dean.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to say that this is a really very important event in the development of the scholarship of the wonderful graduate students we have here at Morgan. This conference has been put on annually, and it is an opportunity for you to show and for you to develop yourselves as scholars. I think going through a graduate program is so much more than passing exams and completing requirements. It is about transformation. It is about transforming yourselves into scholars who will contribute to society, who will continually add knowledge, and this is the way you get prepared. So I thank you for your work in conceptualizing the conference and in implementing it. And I also want to thank Dr. Pascarilla again for being here. And I've heard her speak, I've read her work, and I know that her contribution here will be outstanding. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Prime. Now I like to invite my colleague Karen Irving to continue the program. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you, Dr. Prime. Good afternoon, Morgan State University leadership, faculty, distinguished guests, and students. My name is Karen Irving, and I'm a doctoral student in the Community College Leadership Program, and I am the Morgan State GSA parliamentarian for this academic year. Thank you for attending today's learning opportunity. We are incredibly excited to hear about the many ideas our researchers and future leaders will present today. I have the pleasure of introducing many leaders here at Morgan State. To begin, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mark Garrison. He is the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies. He has held this position since 2012. In addition to being a professor of psychology, he has authored and co-authored 5 textbooks. While at Kentucky State University, Dr. Garrison was the lead contributor to the development of the online Bachelor's of Arts Psychology program. After some welcoming remarks from Dean Garrison, he will introduce our president of Morgan State University, Dr. David Wilson. Welcome, Dean Garrison.
Thank you very much. This particular conference is rather special to me because one of the things that I think I learned most how to do things in was in this exact kind of conference at Emory University for advanced graduate students. And it is there that we got to hear each other present points of view in a way that we could interact, we could make critical comments without any kind of anxiety about how we're being judged and so forth. And it led to some very positive development for me. I wouldn't say that it led me to write those textbooks because other things did that, but it did indeed make me what I am, I think, in an interest of sharing the intellectual enterprise. I would like to make a comment, though, that we are onboarding a director of graduate professional development who would help and assist with this, help build it, add some more elements as well. We're looking forward to developing the 3MT competition, which is a national trend right now where individuals must present their work in a matter of 3 minutes with a single slide. And I've observed some of these and they're great learning experiences. Also, just to close and lead back to the president with this, our mission right now at the School of Graduate Studies is to make Morgan Rank 1 ready. There are many things that we've identified that really need to be transformed, and everyone is eager to do that. And part of that transformation is reflected in the fact that we are experiencing an enormous growth in admissions right now. In fact, we're up 40% over last year at this time and anticipate that kind of growth to continue for several years. So you will have not only yourselves to be with, but even more colleagues in the near future. And with that, I guess I get to turn it back to President Wilson, where we recently had an example of what I just did. I couldn't find the link and it couldn't get on, but I'm here and I'm very happy to be here. But everyone knows the knows our president. So back to you, President Wilson.
Thank you again, Dean Garrison. And of course, I went out of order. And so I have already given my comments to you, and I'm not going to repeat those. I'm going to give most of my time to Dr. Pascarilla. But I did see on the call, if he is still here, our Vice President for Research, Dr. Willie May. For those of you who don't know Dr. May, he's been with us now for about 3 years. He is the former Under Secretary of Commerce and the Director of NIST under the Obama administration. He is a chemist by training, did his undergrad in chemistry at Knoxville College in Tennessee and his PhD in chemistry at the University of Maryland, and has come on board and really helped us to ferret out even more opportunities to bring in transformational federal grants to Morgan to enable many of you to be able to be supported on grants that faculty members are winning. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Willie May if he is open to maybe take a couple of minutes and bring you some remarks, and then I'm going to turn it back to you so we can get to Dr. Pascarilla.
Well, good afternoon, colleagues, and it is indeed a pleasure for me to provide a few comments regarding the 2021 Grind Conference here at Morgan State University. First of all, I commend all of you for literally grinding it out over the past year. This has been the most unprecedented and unique year in all of our lives. None of us here have ever experienced anything like what we endured in 2020 and so far in 2021, but you all have persevered. The theme that you've chosen, a time of reflection, acceptance, and change, interdisciplinary research during COVID-19 pandemic and social injustices, is very timely and apropos. It reflects on the 3 tenets of our new strategic plan that Dr. Wilson mentioned a bit earlier, that we hope to formally unveil later this year. Student success and well-being, as you are being prepared to grow the future and lead the world. It speaks to the type of research that we will be increasingly involved in as we become poised to ascend to R1 research status. It also speaks to the type of research that Morgan will increasingly be involved in as we look to become the premier anchor research institution for Baltimore City and its needs. The 6 plenary lectures that are being offered obviously connect to this theme as well, but they also preview topics that we as a university expect to be known for in this city, in this region, and throughout this nation. The provost and I have recently initiated a new Innovation in Urban Research Award program, through which we will provide 10 $10,000 awards to faculty for seeding their research efforts in securing external grants for activities that address the concerns of the urban community. I have not spoken to her about this yet, but we might also want to consider launching a companion program that incentivizes and recognizes some of the outstanding graduate research efforts in this same domain, as we commit ourselves to living up to our state designation as Maryland's premier public urban research university. Thank you, and I look forward to listening, to jumping around and listening to parts of all of the great talks that we will have this afternoon after we hear from Dr. Pascarilla. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. May. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing our University Council Chair, Dr. Uttam Ghali. In addition to his role as chair, Dr. Ghali is an associate professor in the Community College and Leadership Doctoral Program and serves as the president of the Society of Transnational Academic Researchers, STAR, which advances global social mobility through innovative research and progressive advocacy efforts. Dr. Gawley will share a few words and introduce our keynote speaker for this year's event. Following the presentation of Dr. Pascarilla, our Vice President, Gabriah Spiller, will moderate questions entered in the chat box following the keynote address. May I introduce Dr. Gawley.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Sarif and your team. I acknowledge your great service to the Morgan community by organizing this Graduate Research Interdisciplinary Network and Development Grind Conference today. Thank you and congratulations. Morgan State University is thriving due to the visionary leadership of President Wilson, the outstanding academic administrative leaders such as Dr. Lesia Crompton-Young, our provost, Dr. Willie May, Dean Prime, Dean Marian Akers, along with exceptionally competent, innovative, and diverse faculty, such as Dr. Sean Robinson, Dr. Jacqueline Holland, and many others, and a set of extraordinary students with immense potentials, including the brilliant graduate students like Mohammad Sharif Uddin. As your theme suggests, it is, of course, a time of reflection, acceptance, and change. And the importance of interdisciplinary research during these times of colossal changes cannot be overstated. I'm glad to be surrounded today by people who have given their voice whenever social injustice has shown its ugly face. We as educators have an obligation, opportunity, as well as a challenge facing us as we advance a more democratic, more humane, and more just world. In this spirit, I'm tremendously honored today to have been entrusted with one of the most daunting jobs, that is to introduce the keynote speaker, particularly when you have one that commands so much respect from around the world, and there are only few people who do not know them. But it always helps when you know the person behind the legendary personality that everybody else knows. Today's keynote speaker, obviously, as you all know, is Dr. Lynn Pascarilla, the president of the Association of American Colleges and Universities. We all call AACNU affectionately. As you can imagine, Dr. Pascarilla has served in various key leadership positions prior to that. I will only read a few that I believe will be relevant to lay the foundation of today's event. Before taking the helm of leadership at AACNU, Dr. Pascarilla served as the 18th president of Mount Holyoke College. Prior to that, she served as provost at the University of Hartford and vice provost of academic affairs and dean of graduate school at the University of Rhode Island. A philosopher whose work has combined teaching and scholarship with local and global engagement, Dr. Pascarilla has written extensively on medical ethics, metaphysics, public policy, and the philosophy of law. She is president of Phi Beta Kappa Society and the host of Northeast Public Radio's The Academic Minute. A recipient of Mary Baldwin University Sullivan Award for Outstanding Service to Humanity, Dr. Pascarilla serves as a member of the advisory board of the Newman's Own Foundation and sits on the boards of Lingnan Foundation and the National Humanities Alliance. Named by Diverse Issues as one of the higher education's top 35 women leaders, Dr. Pascarilla is a graduate of Quinebaug Valley Community College, Mount Holyoke College, and Brown University. Dr. Pascarilla has also received honorary doctorate from Elizabethtown College, Bishop's University, the University of South Florida, the University of Hartford, and University of Rhode Island. Okay, a fun fact. I have enjoyed and learned from her remarks many times, and I'm thrilled that she is going to enlighten us today. She was appointed president of AACNU in the year 2016, the very same year that I was awarded K. Patricia Cross Future Leaders Award from AAC&U. Since then, I know for sure that I will also be a leader of higher education when I grow up, because I got the Future Leaders Award. And everybody, I would be grateful if you all could help me welcome Dr. Lynn Pascarilla by clapping your hands.
Thank you so much, Uttam. I mean, we were certainly correct in awarding you a Future Leaders Award. We're so proud of all that you've accomplished. Sharif, thank you so much for your kind invitation to be here with you this afternoon to address the conference theme, A Time of Reflection, Acceptance, and Change, Interdisciplinary Research During COVID-19 Pandemic and Social Injustice. Morgan State provides a model of excellence as an anchor institution, demonstrating that the university's success in research and knowledge creation is inextricably linked to the psychological, social, economic, educational well-being of those in the community in which you're located and those you seek to serve. I'm so honored to have President Wilson as a member of AAC&U's Board of Directors and a member of our executive committee, and grateful to Dean Garrison, Dean Prime, Vice President May, Provost Crumpton Young, for the leadership you engage in every single day in advancing our mission of the vitality and public standing of liberal education. And again, I couldn't be more happy to be here with you. This is a daunting topic, but I just want to give a few reflections about what's happened over this past year. On a sunny October day last year, about 1.5 miles from my home in Washington, D.C., 20,000 chairs sat empty on the ellipse of 53-acre park just south of the White House. Each chair represented 10 Americans killed by the novel coronavirus in the 9 months following the Trump administration's declaration of COVID-19 as a public health emergency in the US. At the time, the president himself was at the Walter Reed Medical Center being treated for the virus in the wake of a gathering held at the Rose Garden to introduce then Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, a reception resulting in at least 34 of the 200 attendees testing positive for COVID-19. The moving installation of President's Park South was part of a national day of remembrance organized by COVID Survivors for Change, a network to support those impacted by the coronavirus. The event, which was broadcast virtually, featured musical performances, speakers, and memorial tributes by relatives and friends who had come together not only to mourn, but also to call for a national strategy with strong leadership to prevent another 200,000 deaths. Grammy Award winner Dionne Warwick served as the host and highlighted the disproportionate toll the pandemic has taken on Black, Latinx, and Native American communities, alongside the need to acknowledge the ways in which individuals from these groups are often frontline essential workers who've kept the nation fed, housed, and educated. Standing in the background as Warwick spoke was Brian Walter, an attendee whose mask bore the words, "I lost my father. I wear this mask to protect yours. Hashtag not just a number." A message reflecting the pain and frustration of those who've lost loved ones and for whom life has been irrevocably changed. That same week, a plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan was uncovered by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. In April, protesters wielding guns, wearing bulletproof vests, and demanding an end to stay-at-home orders attempted to storm the state capitol. Many carried Confederate flags and nooses accompanied by signs comparing the governor to Adolf Hitler and admonishing tyrants get the rope. 2 weeks earlier, President Trump issued a call to action in a series of tweets to liberate Minnesota, liberate Michigan, and liberate Virginia. These followed a push by the president to reopen the country by Easter, despite Dr. Anthony Fauci, the White House's infectious disease expert, asserting that slowing the rate of infection would require several more weeks of aggressive action that would prevent a return to normal. On March 23rd, President Trump tweeted in caps, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem. At the end of a 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go." Almost immediately, posts appeared on Facebook calling for Governor Whitmer to be beaten, killed, and beheaded. And when 13 violent extremists from a militia cell, the Wolverine Watchmen, were arrested on charges ranging from conspiracy to kidnap to material support for terrorist acts and carrying or possessing a firearm during the commission of a felony, critics decried the president for inciting violence. After surveillance revealed that the group planned to kidnap Whitmer, place her on trial for treason, and execute her for perceived crimes, the governor issued a press statement about the president's role, saying, quote, "Each time he's tweeted about me, each time he has said, 'Liberate Michigan,' and said I should negotiate with the very people who are arrested because they're good people, that incites more domestic terror." She went on to argue, quote, "When our leaders speak, their words matter. They carry weight when our leaders meet with, encourage, or fraternize with domestic terrorists. They legitimize their actions and they are complicit. When they contribute to hate speech, they are complicit." In response, the White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany accused Governor Whitmer of fueling divisiveness, insisting, quote, "President Trump has continually condemned white supremacists and all forms of hate. Governor Whitmer is sowing division by making these outlandish allegations. America stands united against hate and in support of our federal law enforcement who stopped this plot." These radically different perspectives on both the appropriate response to the coronavirus pandemic and the limits of free speech in a democratic society that is rife with disinformation campaigns and troll armies reflect fundamental intercultural conflicts in America. The cultural battleground is one in which individualism, characterized by personal liberty, is pitted against calls for individual sacrifice for the common good. Amidst the partisan divides that are prevailing, the simple act of wearing a mask or engaging in social distancing become flashpoints. This is not the first time, of course, that Americans have been called upon to restrict their liberties for the welfare of the nation. I remember breezing through airport security with a briefcase containing a bottle of water, a grapefruit knife, knitting needles, packed on top of books and to read and papers to grade. I can also recall sitting cross-legged on my grandparents' floor, looking through a scrapbook and asking them why they had a sugar book for rationing sugar, gasoline, butter, and canned milk. In the face of a common enemy following 9/11 and the attack on Pearl Harbor, there was no question that Americans would accept the curtailing of liberties and engage in sacrifice for the public good. Today, however, there's no rally cry against a common enemy. Instead, people living within the same nation appear to be inhabiting two different worlds, some more intent on destroying each other than on vanquishing a deadly virus. The expansiveness of the current divide is exacerbated by a growing populism that has issued forth anti-intellectualism and anti-elitism, signaled by a mistrust of science, the media, government, higher education, and all those who hold divergent points of view. Moreover, it's a divide that during this moment of crisis hinders society's ability to address critical questions around whether we can place a price on human life, how to gauge the permissibility of endangering the lives of some for the economic well-being of others, and whether traditional applications of the First Amendment are outmoded in an age of cyber threats and assault weapons. Overcoming these divisions will depend upon the crucial capacity to speak across differences and identify shared values as a means of restoring mutual trust. The events of the past year have prompted a collective consideration of what we owe each other as human beings, foregrounding dilemmas that have become more complex and nuanced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ensuing financial crisis, and this moment of racial reckoning in America. COVID-19 contributed significantly to the growing phenomena of moral distress and moral injury among physicians who were forced to make decisions at odds with their ethical beliefs and commitments as medical professionals. The urgent necessity to transition from ordinary standards of care that privilege individual autonomy and patients' rights to crisis standards of care relying on a utilitarian ethic led to physicians facing unprecedented challenges. Their medical education left them ill-prepared for grappling with situations in which they are asked to allocate scarce resources or to engage in the care of patients when that care might jeopardize their own health or the well-being of their families. If they were fortunate enough to have personal protective equipment, the masks, face shields, and moon suits that offered aegis simultaneously separated them from their patients, imperiling the human connection at the heart of the medical profession. Levels of moral distress exploded as the pandemic magnified health inequities grounded in structural racism, leading to greater uncertainty in ethical decision-making, especially around matters of life and death. And they led to subsequent feelings of shame, guilt, self-condemnation, and despair. At the same time, after double shifts, sleepless nights, and separation from their loved ones, many healthcare professionals were forced to navigate a gauntlet of anti-lockdown protesters who saw them as complicit in an elaborate hoax to destroy the economy. Such scenes have prompted researchers to seek an explanation as to why so many Americans have been willing to tolerate a burgeoning death toll. In addition to compassion fade, a psychological state which sets in when the number of deaths reach a point that the victims are no longer viewed as individuals, but instead as mere statistics, studies have shown that the deaths of some people bother us more than others. The moral machine game, developed by researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2018, is aimed at assessing how people engage in ethical decision-making around which groups of people and non-human animals should be saved as a means of informing achievements in automated technology. Participants from 233 countries and territories were presented with scenarios in which they were forced to decide whether to change the course of an out-of-control driverless car, evaluating the consequences for passengers and a range of pedestrians, including babies, children, adults, pregnant women, the elderly, doctors and other professionals, the obese, handicapped, homeless individuals, dogs and cats. The results of the moral machine game experiments highlight that America's willingness to accept the devastating numbers of deaths from COVID-19 cannot be separated from the fact that the elderly, the poor, and individuals of color have been the most likely to die from the coronavirus, and that the weight assigned to these lives reflects entrenched attitudes with respect to a hierarchy of human value. Doctors have been thrust into their own form of moral machine game from which there's no escape. And the moral injury arising from the choices they encounter around end-of-life decision-making for patients is enhanced by a cultural norm that continues to view death as a failure and thus distinctly un-American. The battle over individual rights versus collective responsibility is also being played out in the public sphere and on college campuses as society confronts the complexities of balancing freedom of expression and inclusion and equity in an age of social media and amidst renewed calls for institutions of all types to countenance and address the roles they have played in perpetuating structural racism and white supremacy. In this ostensibly post-truth era, when speech containing mass distortions and alternative facts aimed at the suppression of dissenting speech rather than an invitation of further speech prevails. The foundational principles that more speech is better is being challenged by those who note that the burdens of unfettered speech are not borne equally. These challenges, similar to the charges made by Governor Whitmer against President Trump, have been met by accusations of a liberal bias, resulting in a flurry of legislation at the state level containing threats to remove funding from institutions that fail to safeguard free expression. While many of the federal orders issued under President Trump were vacated upon President Biden's election, several state legislatures have taken up where President Trump left off. Ironically, in some states, bills allegedly designed to protect all speech were introduced alongside legislation that prohibits speech involved in certain types of diversity, equity, and inclusion training, or the teaching of curricula, such as the 1619 Project. This weaponizing of speech in service to a partisan agenda has threatened to undermine the fundamental assumptions that good ideas triumph in a marketplace of ideas and that free speech inevitably serves to strengthen democracy. The January 6, 2021 attack on the US Capitol by armed insurrectionists seeking to prevent a vote certifying Joe Biden's electoral college victory led to renewed debates over the limits of free expression. Once again, charges of incitement to violence arose after President Trump's statement to his supporters, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," preceded thousands of protesters storming the seat of American democracy. Hundreds carried pro-Trump banners, Confederate flags, and signs that read "Stop the Steal" based on a lie that Joe Biden lost the election. Others brandished anti-Semitic symbols, including one man who wore a Camp Auschwitz t-shirt, signaling his support for the mass extermination of Jews. 5 people, including one Capitol police officer, died that day, and more than 140 were injured. Yet the violence that erupted on January 6th went beyond the individual lives lost and bodily harm sustained. The insurrection constituted an attack on democracy itself. When the mob breached the Capitol building, scrawling "Murder the Media" on a door in the chambers, chanting "Hang Mike Pence," and eerily calling "Nancy, where are you?" in an effort to find Nancy Pelosi and place her on trial, they assaulted democracy's most sacred values. Justice, liberty, and equality serve as the bedrock of our republic, and the right of Americans to self-determination is upheld by the peaceful transfer of power in the aftermath of free and fair elections. Subsequent hearings in the House and Senate on the Capitol Police response to the insurgents drew further attention to inequities in how the officers dealt with the insurrectionists compared to the way in which the predominantly peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters were treated in Washington, D.C. the previous summer. The events of January 6th call for an understanding of how we can move forward as a nation, restore trust in our society's institutions, and find hope in one another through our shared values and heritage. The tumultuous current events we are facing test and reveal what we value and the ways in which a liberal education can help us learn lessons from one another while cultivating personal and social responsibility necessary for furthering the common good. Liberal education has the capacity to serve a unique role in facilitating points of merger around the common good, including the ideals we strive for and the sacrifices we're willing to make in a diverse, pluralistic society. The positing of a liberal education as a valuable mechanism for advancing democracy was affirmed in a 2020 report by Tony Carnevale and his colleagues at Georgetown's Center for Education and the Workforce. The role of educating in taming authoritarian attributes examines the role of colleges and universities in relation to the challenge of rising authoritarianism at the global level and the resulting threat to democracies. The study identifies authoritarianism as a worldview that leads individuals to prefer authority and uniformity over autonomy and diversity, and appeals to research developed by political psychologist Karen Stenner, which measures individuals' inclinations toward either independent thought, respect for diversity, and inquisitive assessment of evidence, or unquestioning deference to authority. Comparing the attitudes and preferences of people from 51 countries, the study found that those living in the United States have moderate authoritarian preferences, ranking 16th worldwide, on par with Estonia, Chile, and Uruguay. While Germany, New Zealand, Sweden, and Ghana were the countries whose residents were least likely to express authoritarian tendencies, the United States has the strongest association between being college educated and a lower propensity toward authoritarianism. Citing the power of liberal education in mitigating against authoritarian tendencies, the study's findings unveil that college graduates at both the bachelor's and associate's degree levels are less likely to express authoritarian preferences and attitudes than those with less education. The researchers proffer that this is likely a consequence of the emphasis on vocational preparation within European models of education and training, as opposed to American higher education's focus on general education and exposure to the liberal arts. Indeed, the researchers found that liberal arts students are less inclined than those studying business or the STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, in isolation to adopt attitudes of political intolerance, signified by the inclination toward the repression of free speech, xenophobia, nativism, racism, ethnocentrism, and religious sectarianism. The authors of the study point to the ways in which authoritarianism tends to flourish when social norms and personal security are threatened. Rising inequalities of wealth and income in the United States, the devastating impact of COVID-19, and divisions over issues of racial and social justice, including the rights of immigrants, have fueled feelings of vulnerability among many Americans, who were thus more likely to seek protection from authoritarian leaders and political systems. And when those with high authoritarian inclinations identify strongly with specific groups, a threat to those groups can result in greater intolerance and a resistance to changing one's views. This is supported by studies on racial intolerance in America, demonstrating that when people in majority groups feel threatened, they support military rule and government actions antithetical to a democracy that would prevent people of color, immigrants, and those speaking languages other than English from moving into their neighborhoods. Liberal education reduces individuals' sensitivities to potential triggers by providing psychological protection in the form of self-esteem, personal security, and autonomy. It also fosters a level of interpersonal trust associated with lower inclinations toward expressing authoritarian attitudes and preferences. The capacity to deal with complexity and diversity and not be threatened by differences of opinion is significant, given that perceptions of threat to physical safety, economic security, group identity, social norms often activate authoritarian tendencies. Exposure of liberal arts majors to diverse contexts, histories, ideas, lifestyles, religions, ways of life, and cultures diminishes the likelihood that differing worldviews will in fact trigger authoritarian responses and increases their chances of being countered with evidence. Engagement with the liberal arts also encourages empathy and tolerance. Furthermore, the findings reveal that post-secondary education leads to greater political participation and civic engagement. This in turn decreases tendencies toward authoritarianism, regardless of political affiliation. Because democracies with higher levels of education have greater levels of political tolerance and are more likely to survive, the report concludes that higher education is the cornerstone of successful democracies, not easily shaken by authoritarian threats. These findings reinforce AAC&U's vision for a liberal education for the 21st century, one that mandates the acceleration of integrative, high-impact learning opportunities that engage every student in solving unscripted, authentic problems across all types of institutions within the context of the workforce, not apart from it. The emphasis of the curriculum should be on learning outcomes, knowledge of human cultures in the physical and natural world, intellectual and practical skills, personal and social responsibility, integrative and applied learning as necessary for all students, intellectual, civic, personal, and professional development, and for success in a global economy. In addition, assignments should make clear relationships among various areas of knowledge. For in a world in which rapidly changing technology means rapid obsolescence, addressing the grand challenges of the future will require the capacity for creative and integrative thinking, the type of thinking that sees academic disciplines not as separate and disconnected silos of learning, but rather as varied approaches to the same enlightened end. This is particularly relevant when considering the future of graduate education, which has become increasingly narrow and specialized. The need for more integrative approaches to graduate education was validated in a report, Branches from the Same Tree, issued at the end of May 2018 by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. I served on the committee, a project of the Board of Higher Education and the Workforce, which was directed to examine whether the integration of the arts and humanities with science, engineering, math, and medicine can improve learning outcomes for all students. The title of the report was taken from a quote by Albert Einstein, who in a letter written in 1937, amidst the backdrop of burgeoning fascist power in Central Europe, expressed consternation over, quote, the dangerous implications of living in a society where long-established foundations of knowledge were corrupted, manipulated, and coerced by political forces. Einstein maintained that all religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree. The report found the need to achieve more effective forms of capacity building for 21st century workers and citizens through the acquisition of broad-based skills from across all disciplines that can be flexibly deployed in different work environments across a lifetime. It concludes that in a world where science and technology are major drivers of social change, historical, ethical, aesthetic, and cultural competencies are more critical than ever. At the same time, the complex and often technical nature of contemporary issues in democratic governance demands that well-educated citizens have an appreciation of the nature of technical knowledge and of its historical, cultural, and political roles in American democracy. For truly robust knowledge depends on the capacity to recognize the critical limitations of particular ways of knowing and to achieve the social relations appropriate to an inclusive and democratic society. In readying students for the future, it's crucial to understand the dangers of creating a hegemony of one tradition over others and an exaggerated trust in the efficacy of the methods of natural science applied to all areas of investigation. The last public lecture I gave in a face-to-face setting happened to be at Morgan State when I was invited to speak at a retreat that President Wilson was hosting. And I talked there about lessons that were imparted nearly 5 decades ago when Paul Feyerabend warned against a lapse on the part of scientists into scientism in his book Against Method. Scientism is a doctrine according to which all genuine knowledge is scientific knowledge, reifying the scientific method as the only legitimate form of inquiry. Despite Feyerabend's admonition, science's success in explaining the world has led to a cultural misappropriation that has conflated science with scientism. The profound societal impact of this conflation has led astrophysicist Adam Frank to challenge the defenders of scientism by calling for a clarification of how scientism manifests itself in order to help us understand the damage it does to the real project that lies ahead of us, building space for the full spectrum of human beings in a culture fully shaped by science. Taking up Frank's charge to consider how scientism manifests itself and especially how the metaphysics of consciousness offers the tools necessary for building the space to which he refers. We need to ask, what would we lose, if anything, by reducing all learning and engagement to practices only rooted in the sciences? This is precisely the question we need to address in designing curricula and research programs for the 21st century. As Feyerabend reminds us, true scientists are not scientistic. They possess a much more nuanced and complex understanding that sensibilities cannot be granted through scientific practices. Science is a tool for investigating metaphysical and epistemological claims, but there is also value that comes from reflecting on experiences in a manner that arouses the very sensibilities that enable us to deal with the metaphysics of being human and conscious in the living world. This realization was undoubtedly part of what was behind Cornel West and Jeremy Tate's op-ed in the Washington Post earlier this week, denouncing Howard University's decision to eliminate their classics program, which the authors describe as a spiritual catastrophe, a sign that as a culture, we have embraced utilitarian schooling at the expense of soul-forming education. West and Tate call for restoring true education, mobilizing the intellectual and moral resources necessary for creating human beings of courage, vision, and civic virtue. At this moment of extraordinary opportunity for reimagining and revolutionizing higher education, we need to embrace the reality that the research necessary to address the continuing challenges of the 21st century will require developing a deeper level understanding across subject areas, connecting knowledge to experience, and adopting a holistic approach to evidence-based problem solving that incorporates diverse, sometimes contradictory points of view. The ability to engage and learn from experiences different from one's own, and to understand how one's place in the world both informs and limits one's knowledge is essential to the crucial capacity to understand the interrelationships between multiple perspectives that are necessary for fulfilling our nation's historic mission of educating for democracy and for solving the global problems of the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Pascarilla, for your thoughtful speech and what you taught about democracy, social injustice during this pandemic. All of our thoughts is really very, very highly appreciated. So I am requesting the audience, if you have any questions for Dr. Pascarilla, please post it in the chat, and our Vice President Gabriela Spiller will facilitate the question answer. Or President Wilson, if you have any question for President Wilson or Dr. Pascarilla.
I actually have a question for Dr. Pascarilla. First of all, just another thought-provoking lecture looking at inequality and the state of our democracy, and I found it to be quite illuminating. My question, because I'm actually moderating a discussion later this evening at the Annapolis Book Festival, where I'm interviewing Heather McGee. Mm-hmm. And I'm making my way through her book, actually, The Sum of Us. Mm-hmm. What racism cost everyone and how we can prosper together. And I've had to kind of read her book between Zoom calls. And I'm late to some of these calls because it's very difficult to put down. But my question is, if you're familiar with this, Lynn, given what you've shared, and one of her chapters here is that we really were never a democracy, given the way the country was formed. Mm-hmm. What role would you see higher education playing in trying to make America the democracy, if you believe Heather, that it never was, and lead to citizens advocating for policies that truly would benefit them over their not advocating for policies that would benefit them because they will also benefit Blacks. I'm really kind of struggling with the very provocative way in which she's kind of putting this forward. So I was just curious about your reaction to what you may have read in her book, based on what you shared with us.
Yeah, well, I think she's exactly right. I mean, we look at Charles Mill's work on the racial contract and the ways in which our nation has been built on this notion of a hierarchy of human value. And think about Derek Bell's groundbreaking work on convergence interests, and we make progress for some only when those in power see it as in their own interests. So, Heather is the daughter of Gail Christopher, who is partners with us on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation.
I had no idea.
Yes, it's true. So we are convinced that the way to make progress is to, first of all, tell the truth, to create an ascendant narrative that centers the voices of those who have been consigned to the lower shelves of history. And then we can move on to racial healing. But we cannot do that unless we are willing to tell the truth, which is why I had so much focus on this false narrative that's been created and what we can do to upend it through inserting the power of a liberal education in discerning the truth and in conveying the truth. And in fact, instilling the courage necessary to face the truth, to imagine the possibility that some of one's most fundamentally held beliefs might actually be mistaken. And so that's how we're approaching this at AAC&U. It is through our initiatives around truth, racial healing, and transformation on campuses. The work won't be easy, but it is necessary. And I remember this interview with Heather, and I don't know if she talks about it in this book. I have the book, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet, where she was on TV and someone called in to say, I'm racist. I believe in white supremacy. I don't know how to, I need help. How do I do this? And rather than condemn him, she said, thank you so much for telling the truth about where you're coming from. And that's a point of where they could come together, common ground. And we've seen books like Rising Out of Hatred. But we must insist on together and telling the truth.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson and Dr. Pascarilla. Do you have any other question? Gabriela, please. Anyone have any other questions?
Can I ask one?
Sure, sir.
Thank you, President Lynn. I'm really enamored by the conversation going on. Thank you, President Wilson, for asking that thoughtful question. President Pascarilla, you argued, science as a tool for investigating the metaphysical and epistemological claims. That's what we as academe try to do. But if we look at around the world, we see that the authoritarian leaders and demagogues have used the very tools given by science and technology to sow doubt against democracy and the scientific method. So at this kind of critical time, and with the prevalent existence of ignorance around the world, the majority of the world doesn't even know the taste of democracy, forget about the beauty of it. Mm-hmm. So how vulnerable that population is that doesn't know that the thing like democracy exists and that it is a good thing. So that makes our challenge even very critical at this point of time. So what can we educators do to mitigate and make foray into this opportunity and challenge at the same time, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that we can do is to continue to serve as public intellectuals, to get beyond the gates of the academy. When I started by saying that, congratulating Morgan State for being an anchor institution, that is more important than ever to make oneself visible in the communities we are seeking to serve, because we get caught up in our own language game and we are talking to ourselves. We're in an echo chamber, and there is mistrust of higher education. We've seen a rapid decline in public trust in higher education. We have seen over this past year a decline in the number of young men of color who are going to college because of economic necessity. And we are in danger of losing a generation of students unless we get out there and create access in new ways by engendering a sense of trust. We will face the further exacerbation of what I consider to be the most significant problem in higher education, which is the economic and racial segregation in higher education. And you're right, we have this year seen a rapid decline as well in democracy around the world. And so we must come together, raise our voices in talking about why the values at the foundation of democracy are more important than ever. So in encouraging you to serve as a public intellectual, I also encourage colleges and universities to change their structures for tenure and promotion to recognize the work that takes place both inside and outside of the classroom. It's not just how many peer-reviewed journal articles that you can produce or how much grant funding you get, but the ways in which you can transform lives through this work of taking your expertise and making it available through whatever vectors are possible to transform society.
Thanks, Dr. Pascarilla. I have one question. In your last speech in Star Scholars, you talked about equity, and I am very much interested in equity in education, especially in higher education.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you give us some thoughts for the graduate students who are in our either doctoral studies or doing our masters, how equity works or doesn't work in our higher education?
I think equity must be a focus for the future of higher education. We need to look at the ways in which our policies, practices advantage some and disadvantage others. If we have programs in place that are what we consider at AAC&U to be high impact practices, we need to interrogate them, look at the demographic data, disaggregate the data and see if everyone is able to take advantage of those high impact practices at both the undergraduate and the graduate level, and revise our policies, programs, curricula in a way that ensures that everyone has equal access. This will be hard work, but now's the time to do it as we look at, the remarkable pivot of higher education to online and remote learning. In the process, we saw food and shelter insecurities experienced by students at all types of institutions across the country, and the expansiveness of the digital divide when you had people lining up for computers or access to digital parking lots. We know about the caregiving responsibilities of individuals, the disparately negative impact of COVID-19 on women scholars and scholars of color. And so how are we responding to that? We're just going to say, okay, too bad for you. What are colleges and universities doing to redress those inequities moving forward? And so I think I have every confidence that Morgan State will be engaging in this critical work. I want to believe that other institutions will do the same now when we do have an opportunity to address the challenges for the future.
I do have one quick question, Lynn, in this format. This question is whether you think the days are numbered for the GRE, SAT, and ACT, but in this group, the GRE, we have now in higher ed, for the most part, come through 2 cycles in COVID where we are admitting students without having taken those standardized tests. And we will do some kind of an assessment, of course,
Yes.
because we have a good quote unquote control group and treatment group. But where do you think these assessment tools that one can argue have really kind of created even a greater kind of inequity in terms of how we admit students who have not been exposed to things as other students have been? Has nothing to do with the ability on the part of those students to be successful in graduate programs in this case, but the level of exposure that they've had along the way.
Yeah, I certainly think the SAT and ACTs are on their last legs. I think they are dead. GREs, I would hope, would be the same. For far too long, we have asked people to answer questions for which we already know the answers on standardized tests. We need to ask students to grapple with these unscripted problems that we'll be confronting in the future. We need to assess differently. We have looked at students from the perspective of deficits, what they are lacking, as opposed to asset-based approaches to education in the admission process, in the assessment process. And so I'm hoping that we can focus on what all students bring. When I applied to graduate schools and was admitted to MIT and Brown and a number of other institutions, I'm convinced that part of the reason I was admitted to these institutions was because they were trying to attract women and students of color in philosophy. And so I didn't have to take the GREs. We didn't allow, my husband and I did not allow our children to take the SATs because everyone knows that there is racial, class, gender, other biases in these tests. And the fact that we have kept them around for so long is a reinforcement of these hierarchies of human value that I think need to be jettisoned now. So I don't have any equivocation about this. And I think that there are more meaningful ways to assess through portfolios, through demonstrated work across a student's career that will serve both the institution and the student better. And employers are saying that's what they want. They don't care what grades student received. They want demonstrated proficiency with respect to the skills and competencies, and that can come from portfolios, not from standardized tests, and not always from grades.
And actually, we are in early discussions about moving toward a comprehensive learner record here at Morgan as well that would capture exactly what you've indicated. It's not a transcript with letter grades, but how do you actually capture these skills on a student's transcript where employers and others can get a sense of what has actually been gained from the undergraduate or graduate experience?
That's right. That's great. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, President Wilson and Dr. Pascarilla. I know Provost Young is here. Madam Provost, can you please join us? And Provost Young. I think she's. I saw Provost Young is here. Maybe. Provost Young.
Perhaps you should go to Dean Garrison, and then I will have the office to see where Dr. Young is.
President Wilson?
Yes, Madam Provost.
I am multitasking, President Wilson. I am So I'm not sure that I heard the full information in which you've asked me to respond to.
No, I think actually Sharif was just indicating that it's your time on the agenda, I believe. But let me turn it back over to the president of the GSA.
Just Madam Provost is here, so I want to include her in the conversation because this very important conversation is here. So I want to include her in the conversation, and we have 5 more minutes, and Madam Provost will give us a after the presentation. Student will the graduate student will present their studies, and then Madam Provost will join again with us in the closing ceremony.
That's right. In fact, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to addressing you all in the closing remarks. I have actually prepared a research challenge for you because certainly your conversation today has been an important conversation about what research we should be thinking of given the disruption of the pandemic. And so I've prepared a challenge for you, something for you to think about as graduate students as you chart your path towards conducting your research for your theses and dissertation. So I'm looking forward to our opportunity to talk at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Provost. And Dr. Pascarilla, I just want to share something about Morgan. You know, Morgan, we all know that Morgan is a minority serving institute. And I am minority among the minorities. And I am getting the equity, I am getting what I need to grow up as a Morgan. When I came in 2016, if I think who I was, not today who I am, all Morgan built me up. So Dean Garrison, Dean Prime, School of Education, Teacher Education Department, I am grateful to everyone. So this kind of practice, we know we want in all campuses. And it is good for us how we can grow up. And my fellow graduate students who are here, many of us, we don't try to take the advantage. Please try to take the advantage. If we do something, we have support. We have lots of support. When I previously, anything, I'm not giving any example. Everyone at Morgan, faculty members, dean, provost office, president's office, graduate school, all are very supportive. I'm really, really very grateful to Morgan be here. I got an admission as a doctoral student also at 1000, but when I worked at 1000 campus, I did not match myself over there. So I came back to Morgan. So really I'm enjoying. Thank you, President Wilson, for all of the things that you are doing for us. We are grateful to you. So we will go to our breakout room. Gabriel.
Hello, everyone. So now we're going to move on to our breakout rooms. And so we're going to have 3. In the first breakout room, we're going to have Chelsea Henderson. In the second breakout room, we're going to have Irene B. Moline, Larice Edwards, and Olubukola Alonge, and Shanchisa Pilgrim. They're going to go in order like that. And in our third breakout room, we're going to have John Dre Jennings and Antonia Ngobo. And so each one, you're going to be able to ask your questions through the chat box in your respective breakout room. So. And you guys are free to choose whichever breakout room you want, 1, 2, or 3. Yeah. Sharif, can you put that slide back up with the options for us, please?
I don't know if I go it will.
So Chelsea Henderson looks like she's going to be talking about PTSD and preterm birth among African American women. In our second room, our first group is going to talk about sustainability capacity and the assessment of selected grantees from Maryland Department of Health Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities. Sean Caesar Pilgrim will talk about exploring the relationship between the support services for teen parents attending community colleges and student engagement. In our third room, we have John Dre Jennings, who will talk about the case study on an urban public school, examining teachers' perceptions on gentrification. And lastly, we have Antonia, who will talk about the cognitive effects of trauma and its impact on African-American student achievement in mathematics. And so, like I said, you guys are free to choose whichever one you want. And hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Collins, I think you should join your room.
Yeah, I'm joining just a few. No.
I think Gabriel number 2. Collins in number 3, I think. Gabriel number 2, I think. Irene, I think you are in room number 2 or 3.
I'm in break room number 2.
Okay.
Sharif, how do I share my PowerPoint?
I think you did not join in room number 2 yet.
Oh, how do I join? Where do I join?
Let me put you in room number 2. Gabra, you are not in number 2?
I'm in number 1. Can you make McDaniel, her name is Deirdre McDaniel. Can you make her co-host? She's presenting with Chelsea Henderson in room 1.
Deirdre.
It's Risha McBride.
Deirdre. Gabra, you are not in number 2? DEI. No, I cannot see her here. I cannot do it right now. Sorry, Mohib. Sorry.
So did everyone here find a room, or do you need help? We're joining breakout rooms right now. And so there's 3 options. So you can just choose any one you want. 1, 2, or 3. And I think they're starting right now. Keyshawn, I think I put you in room 2 already. I think you just have. Oh, I think I put the wrong.
Gabraya, please join room number 1. Gabraya?
Okay, there's people coming in. I was just putting them in their rooms.
No. Please you go to. There is no moderator in room number 1.
Okay. Fatima wants to go to room number 2. If you could put her in that one.
No. Please you go to.
And I'll go to room number 1.
There is no moderator over here. Hello. Yes, sir. Will you join again in the closing ceremony at 6? Oh no, provost will be here. So if you come, it looks good. Just okay. Oh, she will join at 6. Okay. Thank you for everything. Thank you. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for joining. Hello. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Kishwan. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, thank you. We're in the presentation, 2 rooms. People are presenting their study. Do you want to join in any room?
I would like to, yes.
Please click on the breakout room at the bottom and join in any room.
Okay.
2 or 3.
All right. Thank you.
No problem, Lisa. Thank you for coming.
Who is in which room?
Oh, I forgot their name. From School of Education, you will find them in number 3. You might know Antonia.
Yeah.
She's
Okay.
presenting right now.
Okay.
Room number 3. Hello, Nada. Thank you, Dean Garrison. I think, oh, coming back, good.
I was going to say, I'm going to take a brief break. We are starting back right at 6. Yeah.
Yes, Dean Garrison 6.
Oh, no, I apologize for being a few minutes late. Not only was I
No, this is
how
not
to make
completely fine. I understand.
I was on a call at the same time, so it was kind of like one hand typing to get in and one hand trying to handle the phone. I was going to say, I'm going to take a brief break. We are starting back right at 6.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Dean Garrison 6.
Oh, no, I apologize for being a few minutes late. Not only was I
No, this is
how
not
to make
completely fine. I understand.
I was on a call at the same time, so it was kind of like one hand typing to get in and one hand trying to handle the phone. I was going to say, I'm going to take a brief break. We are starting back right at 6.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, Dean Garrison 6.
Oh, I apologize for being a few minutes late. Not only was I
No, this is not completely fine. I understand. Fatima, can you fix it? What's the problem? Fatima, why it is echoing again and again? Thank you, Madam Provost. Fatima, can you fix it? What's the problem? Fatima, why it is echoing again and again? Thank you, Madam Provost.
Fatima's in here yet.
Thank you, Madam Provost. Can you fix it? What's the problem? Fatima, why it is echoing again and again? Thank you, Madam Provost.
Fatima's in here yet.
Thank you, Madam Provost. Can you fix it? What's the problem? Fatima, why it is echoing again and again?
All right, good. I couldn't unmute myself. Try turning off your mic. All right. So